Israelis came to understand the four values, democratic state, Jewish majority, peace, and greater Israel does not go together. You cannot attain all of them. You have there are trade-off. And the most interesting thing is that leaders and public from the right side of the political map also shifted, forming now the central part, which is Kadima. So this is one of the things that I wanted to tell you. However, as a result, Polster can never say as a result, because we don't find causal relations. But I think as a result of the disappointment and disillusion with the disengagement, and the talks about there is no partner on the other side, the Israeli public during the last few years, the Israeli public discourse shifted from focusing on conflict resolution to focusing on conflict management. The debate is not about solution, but the debate is rather about how to live with it. Till 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, when President Obama brought it back to conflict resolution. The third thing the general thing that I want to say is, I think it's extremely important, though it's not my finding. I'm going to quote finding of a colleague of mine, Professor Yaakov Shamir. You know, the Oslo Accord talked about the framework, the two-state solution, which Nader referred to, but it didn't get into the details, into the component of any initiative. Professor Shamir assessed the public opinion, agreement or disagreement with the components of what is cited as Clinton parameters for each component, and then after his interview is presented with all the components, he said, okay, now, if it's a package, the whole package, will you support or oppose? And though there are reservations, some strong reservation to some of the components, there is agreement about more than 50% agree to the whole package, and I think this is very important. Now let's shift to the specific findings. As my colleague Colin said, we had about 200 questions. We went wide. We took all the possible solutions, and some of them, few, Nader could not present to his interviews, and some of them I could not present to my interviews, but usually went wide. So we found agreement on few things. There is agreement on border, the reference point is 67 with some adjustments, swap of territories. There is agreement that the state of Palestine will have strong police force. There is disagreement, of course, on the issue that Netanyahu spoke about it yesterday. There is disagreement on demilitarization of the Palestinian state. Most of Israel agreed with it, most of Palestinian opposed it. Now let's look at the refugees. We'll go now on the components of the specific component of any initiative. Refugees. Obviously, the right of return is rejected by the vast majority of the Israelis. I don't think we have to talk about it because right of return, full right of return would mean almost as committing suicide by Israel. We had another possible solution that Israel will acknowledge of the suffering of the refugees with right of return to the Palestinian state and some return to Israel. So 64% of the Palestinian agree with it, but 60% of the Israeli did not accept it. The only solution out of, as I said, that was almost accepted by majority of both societies is that the UN should close the refugees camp and relocate them in other places. 84% of the Israelis agree, definitely, no wonder. But also 47% of the Palestinians agree, which is a huge minority. Jerusalem, as you will see, there is no agreement about Jerusalem. However, there is quite a big majority on both sides that are willing to negotiate on Jerusalem. And this is the most important issue. As I said, the significant majority, they say that Jerusalem is negotiable, but still it's significant minority, still it is minority. We found disagreement on Jerusalem. The solution that we had, divide the city according to Palestinian and Israeli neighborhoods. Palestinian go to Arab neighborhoods, we go to Palestine, and Israel goes to Israel. 43% of the Israelis, 40% of the Israeli Jew, and 37% of the Palestinian agree to this. We found also some majority agreement about the holy sites, free access to everyone. No one will have sovereignty, total sovereignty. Israel will have sovereignty on the Jewish holy sites, the Muslim, the Palestinians on the Muslim. We find 52% of the Israelis and 46% of the Palestinians agree to this. Settlements, also there is no majority agreement, but 45% of the Israelis are willing to accept dismantling most of the settlements with equal exchange, and 44% of Palestinians are ready to agree to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mina. Can we now pass on to the international context?
I'm Jim Zogby, and I'm from the Arab American Institute, but also poll with my brother John at Zogby International. We've polled in this context 4 distinct groups. We've polled Arab Americans, and we've polled American Jews, and we've polled America across the board, and we've polled annually, actually, we've polled Arabs in 6 countries for an ongoing tracking poll we do on attitudes across the Arab world. I'm going to, in less than 5 minutes, tell you the results that are a combination of good news, but also trouble on the horizon. The good news is that in the Arab American and Jewish American polling, and I'm going to not step on Jim Gerstein's presentation, but there is rather almost shocking agreement between both communities on almost every issue, to the degree whereby Arab American and Jewish American attitudes are within the margin of error of each other on almost all questions, whether it be Palestinian state, or ending settlements, or ending terrorism as a use of terrorism and resistance, or in whether the president should take a different stance, steer a course down the middle as opposed to favoring one side or the other, the Arab Peace Initiative as a reasonable way forward. All of the outlines of the Geneva Accords, we took the issues of the Geneva Accords and parsed them out phrase by phrase, and found that on almost every issue, from refugees to borders, etc., clear agreement between the 2 communities. I think that's rather stunning news. Those who say they know either community and don't know that, don't really know either community at all. In their, not just majorities, but in their super majorities, in the 70 to 80% range on most questions, there is that kind of consensus on all of these issues. With regard to Americans, we've been polling Americans on this issue now for almost 20 years. And despite the difficulties that have emerged, we found in the most recent poll we did just about a month ago,